been a while. I really wanted to make a new video, and I got super inspired when I saw AIPNow being released. And this hits on a lot of themes I used to talk about quite a bit on the channel back in the day. For those of you who are familiar with the work I did in the past, you'll definitely remember me talking about the value of SaaS 2.0 and how Palantir could deliver sort of this next generation of software. And we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about marketplaces and their dynamics. We're going to look at existing marketplaces, the revenue they generate, etc. And we're also going to talk about the SaaS 2.0 potential. So get ready, people, for AIPNow Explained. All right, so let's dig into AIPNow, exactly what it is and how it's used. So AIPNow is built on top of the Foundry marketplace, and I'll leave links in the description to the documentation so you can go explore this. This is public. You can learn more about the Foundry marketplace. Today, I primarily use the marketplace to package solutions I've built for my teams. That can include everything from utils and data like common functions to ontologies that are foundational ontologies that power other solutions to full-blown apps, right? The marketplace is incredibly powerful. It provides a really low friction distribution mechanism for solutions built on top of Foundry. And you'll see later how if you're using the same foundational ontologies, it's really easy to ship and deliver value to completely disconnected teams who have no idea what you're sort of working on. The way it works is inside your stack there, you can access the marketplace as an application. There are preloaded apps in there, and some of them are the AIPNow apps, right? And so you can search in here for AIPNow. You'll see them in there. You can hit the install button, and when you do that, and here's just an example of what the sort of search screen looks like. But when you do that and you hit the install button, you'll get a screen that sort of looks like this, and you can select where you want to install it, which ontology to select, which user groups have access, and then you can hit install, and it will install that solution. And again, this works not only for the AIPNow provided solutions, but for any of the custom ones that you produce and publish to Marketplace. And again, I primarily use Marketplace today to power teams internally so that we can reuse and share solutions. And I'll also use it to deliver Foundry applications to customer stacks. So it's primarily a distribution mechanism, but is quickly evolving into what could be a commercial marketplace that actually generates revenues for third parties. So again, AIPNow is delivered this way. You can install it. And once things are installed, it's important to note that within Marketplace, there are some great developer tools for choosing things like release channels, whether or not you receive automatic updates. So yes, Palantir did do the thought of like, okay, how do we ensure you can update these applications? And there also are maintenance window restrictions that you can put on here. So lots of great tools related to marketplace applications that are available to the people installing them that help with the typical SDLC or software development lifecycle that you're going to have with these things. So yeah, understanding how this is delivered, AIPNow, again, are a set of Foundry marketplace applications that customers who have a Foundry stack can search for and install. And again, the primary use case today is powering internal use cases. But as this product matures, I can see it definitely becoming a place where monetization is a thing. Third parties can install these apps and distribute them. All right, so let's quickly just discuss what's in AIPNow today. And if you're interested in checking these out, head on over to aip.palantir.com. As you can see, they're broken down by sector, and there's about 50 as far as I know. These apps range from things that have been used in production applications and are products that have been used for quite a long time to solutions that have been developed as part of AIPCon. I particularly am into these Apex supply chain offerings. I think they're really cool. I'm also really love this dynamic scheduling thing. I'm like, it's funny, but scheduling is actually something that kind of takes up a lot of time, and it's relevant everywhere, and it's pretty much low-hanging fruit in a lot of these Gen AI use cases. So anyway, head on over to aip.palantir.com. You can learn more about the various solutions that are there. Again, I think there's about 50 or so, with more being added all the time. Be sure you check out Chad's videos. They're on the Palantir developer channel. I'll also leave a link in the description. He's doing some of the best content over there right now, so I really suggest you check out the Palantir developer channel and check out Chad's videos. Breaking all these solutions down, you're gonna really enjoy it. And so, yeah, these are really interesting offerings, again, ranging in complexity depending on how they were created. But I definitely encourage you to check them all out. Okay, so let's just briefly talk about the so what here. The primary so what is the difference between SaaS 1.0 and SaaS 2.0, in my opinion. Uh, it's not just having a marketplace for apps, it's the architecture of how this actually works. And I'm going to play you a clip in a minute from a gentleman from Andreessen Horowitz who was talking about this back in 2022, and I covered it on my channel. But essentially, the way SaaS 1.0 works today is that for each app you have, each of these point solutions, you essentially have the vendor VPC or the vendor's environment where that app is hosted. And it represents a data silo for each one of these. So like if you're using Expensify or you're using Amplitude or Heap or Workday or whatever, most of the time what happens is that that app is hosted inside the vendor's own environment, and you have to pay extra money to get that data re-imported. Now, I don't know if that's the case with the ones I just mentioned. I'm just saying that generally speaking, you have to actually buy like a BI connector or some other type of additional offering to get the data out of the silo and back in your own environment. Now, keep in mind, this is your data, right? You're paying to get that data back into your environment where you do analytics, hence why all these companies typically have business intelligence connectors. This is a pain in the ass to manage. Like each one of these, someone in your organization has to maintain the access permissions, has to maintain the risk profile. So like what I mean by risk profile, all of the security, governance, etc. That all has to be managed by IT, and it generally goes into their risk profile. And it's gotten so bad. I mean, 70% of an organization's software estimated today is SaaS products like this. There are even SaaS products to manage SaaS products. That's how bad it's gotten. So it's a huge management overhead. It's not ideal too because this data doesn't update in real time. It's not transactional typically. It's read only. So that means a lot of API integrations to actually do any work with these solutions that affect the data in any way. That's a whole nother can of worms when you're dealing with these API orchestrations here and this API gateway piece. There are whole companies like MuleSoft that just deal with API orchestration, which is required for this really complicated service mesh that now has appeared as a result of SaaS 1.0. So fast forward to SaaS 2.0. Well, as you can see, we've greatly simplified things. And under the Palantir model, what they're essentially allowing vendors to do is recreate those applications as AIPNow or marketplace apps. And all it is are the software artifacts, right? This is running inside Palantir's VPC. This is the customer's Foundry stack, which typically runs in Palantir's VPC. But now all of my SaaS data is in one place, along with all of my first-party data, all of my alternative data sources, and I can do my analytics directly on top of that. What does that do? You got way faster cycle times. The data is updated in real time. I have native transaction capabilities here, so all my application databases are already in Foundry, and so these apps that I buy, when they change things, will update my analytics in near real time. I don't need any API orchestration anymore to do my analytics. So the complexity just sort of melts away. The great benefit for the application provider is like, I don't need my own infrastructure anymore. I don't have to have this crazy AWS infrastructure that I'm paying for and managing. I can literally just focus on the software and the business value that the software delivers. In my opinion, that's going to allow us to create much smaller companies with much fewer individuals that generate billions in revenue, especially with AI coming into the picture here. Everyone laughed at Chamath's like 80-20 thing he was talking about, where you could make like every SaaS application for like a fraction of the cost. Yeah, on Foundry, that's going to be a reality. And why is that important? Again, I'm going to play this clip from this gentleman from Andreessen Horowitz, Martin Casado, I believe is his name. And you're going to understand why this is super valuable. But understand this is a major 0 to 1 move here.
So related question. In the next $1 trillion worth of data, what are the top 3 trends you'd put your $100 billion of investment on?
Well, listen, I think at the base layer, it's Lakehouse. I think it's ELT on top of that. And then on top of that, I think we're going to remake all the SaaS apps as data apps, right? I think Segment for CDP was just one example. I think Panther's doing a great job at SIM. And I think we're going to go through all of them. Workday, Salesforce, Adobe, they're just going to be re-implemented as like apps on top of the data layer.
Amazing.
I do. Like that's not being glib. I really believe that.
And then final question, out of the massive number of companies that you see those pitches every year, thousands, what is, the one pitch that either you haven't seen that you want to see, or the thing that no one does well that you think is, the biggest thing that you'd love to see come by the A16 partner meeting?
I want to line out the door with people coming in that says, remember how we just went from on-prem, to SaaS for every app? I want to go from app to the data version of that for every app. Like I want like a company for every SaaS app that's just going to build a data person on the new stack.
So I wanted to show you all FedStart, because I think it's a really important model to kind of understand. And people always ask me, like, oh man, can Palantir provide a commercial version of, say, FedStart? And so what FedStart offers companies, particularly startups in the government space, is the ability to go from like a day zero startup to go to a platform that's actually sellable, taking advantage of all the work Palantir has done to certify apps, to make them compliant with security and governance requirements in the government space. And that enables companies to get to market faster without having to spend as much money. That exact same model applies to these new SaaS 2.0 apps built on top of Foundry. What Foundry gives you is all of the certifications, the HIPAA compliance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of the data governance and security. So you don't have to build that into a day zero, like a day one SaaS offering that your startup's trying to build, right? And that's super important, because a lot of the work that goes into making a SaaS product that people can actually use has nothing to do with the features that deliver business value and everything to do with risk profiles, right? Yeah, I think you all heard Alex Karp and Shyam say, IT manages risk, not value. That's right. That's exactly what they do. So by building these apps on top of Foundry instead of in their own sort of cloud native environments, companies get all of these benefits day zero. Do you know how much less people you're going to need inside your organization? How much cheaper you can sell your offerings for when you don't have to worry about all of those enterprise requirements that large companies are going to throw at you, knowing your product is compliant with the largest companies in the world day one? Like, this is huge. It takes you from organizations that have hundreds of engineers and thousands of additional support staff to ones that need, a handful of engineers, like 5, right? 3, 1 maybe even. And so you can compete on margin, and that's what the classic disruptive innovation is all about. It's not about technology delivering new use cases, though it can, as much as it is about, and this is classic disruption, it's about competing on margin, doing things cheaper with technology. And that's what Foundry is going to enable here, and why I'm so excited. Imagine companies being able to compete with, a major CRM vendor, or, someone who distributes expense tracking software, or any number of SaaS applications. If you can compete with one person, two people, 3 people, because you don't have to worry about all the complexity related to that compliance, you're going to crush it. And so I think it's really important to note that this model with AIPNow and the marketplace really does enable SaaS 2.0, where you're going to see dramatic declines in cost for delivering this software. All right, now that we've covered the so what, let's jump into marketplace dynamics, how companies make money from these things, and maybe some of the challenges that Palantir is going to face running its own marketplace seeded with these AIPNow apps. All right, so let's take a look at basic marketplace dynamics. You typically have a platform which hosts and administers the marketplace. You also have app publishers, which publish apps to the marketplace, and the marketplace pays those publishers based on whatever predetermined agreements they have. Also, publishers tend to make a lot more money through the ad-supported versions, which you're going to see in a minute. So third-party ad networks are often very much a big part of the app space, and that can be true in enterprise. You'd be surprised, but there are ways to integrate advertising into enterprise applications as well that may be free. So ad networks play a really big role. That can be both internal ad networks that are created by the platform, or external ones like Google Ads. So ad networks and advertisers play a huge role, and you can see those dynamics modeled here. And then, of course, there's the consumers, right, which purchase apps and install apps from the marketplace, and the app publishers support those consumers. So if you need technical support, or you need some kind of issue, you have some kind of issue with billing, you want to interact with the app publisher, there's a way to do that. So this is a basic diagram, a basic graph of most marketplace dynamics, and it's important. This course is a 10,000-foot view here, but it's important to understand how these things work and understand these dynamics as we go to evaluate the marketplaces further. All right, so let's just take a quick look at some existing app stores to just learn a little bit how these marketplace dynamics kind of play out. First thing to kind of look at here is the number of publishers inside the Apple App Store, Google Play, Amazon, Tencent, Roku, and Salesforce. And you're going to see in a minute, almost everyone seems to have marketplace: Salesforce, Databricks, Snowflake. So marketplaces aren't uncommon. Even enterprise ones, Google's launched a new one, Google, I think it's called Workplace, for third parties to build enterprise apps on top of G Suite. So you notice here we have a lot of publishers. Google is by far, it has the most number of publishers, which makes sense when you consider their platform, Android OS, with followed by Apple, and then there's a huge drop off. But let's take a look at how the number of publishers sort of correlate to the number of apps. So you can see there's a lot of apps in Google Play. And the blue bar, the dark blue bar is total apps, and then the light blue bar is free apps. So this is the relationship between free and paid. Very few paid apps in this space. And even if you look at some of these other channels in Salesforce here, we don't actually have the metrics. There is a very high number of free apps relative to paid. Just there aren't that many apps people typically are willing to pay for. So just to underscore, there have to be alternative means of generating revenue, and that includes in-app purchases and advertising. Those are the two primary ways that people make money. And so if I were to look at enterprise versions, if the equivalent of in-app purchases might be like consulting services that are paid for, or further like pay for features that are value unlocked that consumers will pay for. But just understand, you got to have a lot of free apps, and you kind of got to have a lot of publishers. And that creates the network effects necessary to get people using these, right? So like, I don't think you're going to generate too many network effects if you have too high a number of paid apps, because people just aren't going to do the adoption, which is going to hurt this number, which is the number of publishers. So generating network effects with marketplaces does greatly depend on your ability to engage developers and to drive free applications and provide alternative means of monetization. If we look at revenue generated, now this is quite interesting, you'll see that Apple generates a lot more revenue than Google Play. And generally we see this in the users of those apps. Apple users tend to spend more money than Android users. This is true pretty much across the board. So very interesting dynamic here as to the platform of choice and how much money is spent on those platforms and what that means for the type of customer. In the enterprise space, you could probably equate it to very large Fortune 500 enterprises versus very small SMB players. And so but you need kind of both. You can't have a lack of either, in my opinion. And again, that gets back to this free versus paid, and like to what degree do you need a large number of publishers that are hitting the widest market possible to generate the network effects necessary to capture this revenue. But there is a dynamic at play where the platform and device and the type of person that attracts plays a factor. Notice here Salesforce does make approximately 1.6 billion in revenue from its app store, or not app store, but its marketplace. So interesting here to see this dynamic, and I couldn't get numbers for Amazon, Tencent, or Roku. It's not zero. I just couldn't find the numbers. But very interesting dynamics here, and it's something we should all kind of think about as to the importance of network effects, the importance of the number of publishers, the importance of the number of free applications, and the potential revenue generation. I mean, even looking at Salesforce with $1.6 billion, that's a big number. And so these are important dynamics and important things to get right. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things we can infer based on the data we just looked at. And I think number one is just the developer ecosystem vitality, right? So like a robust ecosystem with a lot of publishers suggests like dynamism and competition. It correlates with the platform's ability to attract and retain developers, which is super important for like the continuous innovation and the offerings and really generating those network effects. So you have to engage developers. There's no way around that. Also monetization strategies, right? So like App stores that provide like diverse and flexible monetization strategies allow developers to explore how they can get free apps into the market, but then capture revenue later on, right? And so they're number one, there has to be a monetization strategy, right? Like if you want to get that huge number of apps and that huge number of, that generate huge network effects, you have to engage developers, and to engage developers, you have to offer monetization strategies. Market adoption and penetration. So like this is sort of interesting, but like based on the data, a high percentage of free apps suggests that if a platform, basically the higher percentage of free apps in the marketplace, the more you're catering to a broad market, right? And I think that there's this correlation between the number of free apps that's really going to suggest how broad of a market, how much saturation you have. That those things are going to correlate. So if you have a marketplace that's made up of entirely paid apps, for example, you're probably not going to get very much market penetration and adoption. And the last one is user experience and trust, right? Like you have to have a high degree of trust among users, and the way you get the high degree of trust is to have a really good user experience. So quality control is essential to provide a safe and reliable user experience. And without it, if you get subpar apps and you get a poor user experience and the installs are tough, people aren't going to use it. So I think if we sort of look at the data and we kind of infer some of the insights, we have to pay really close attention to this, and it should really be gauging our sort of analysis of AIP Now and how Palantir is approaching this market. That said, it's very early days, and I'm sure they're considering a lot of these things, but it's important to glean these insights from the data. And also, like in case you didn't notice in that previous slide, like marketplaces are fully saturated, right? Like Databricks has a marketplace, Snowflake has a marketplace, Salesforce has a marketplace, Google has an enterprise marketplace in addition to the Play Store. So it's important to note that like everyone sort of has a marketplace. I would say with Databricks and Snowflake, what you'll notice is that they are much more focused on data products and models and not applications, whereas AIP Now and Foundry's marketplace are actual full-blown end-to-end applications that actually you would be using much like anything else, like Workday or like Amplitude or like Expensify. These are like full-blown apps, and they incorporate artificial intelligence. All right, well, there you have it. My breakdown of AIP Now, why I think it matters, the value add for Palantir and its shareholders, and the future, potentially, of SaaS 2.0. Again, check out Chad's videos. I'm going to leave a link in the description to the developer channel. You will not be disappointed. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.